What are you doing? Good conference, huh? I mean, this is my fourth one, and I'm always learning something. Is it working?
It's not. I can try to change it back.
That's okay. No worries. I'll just, unless we need it for the recording.
I think they do.
Do they?
Yeah.
No. I mean, I'll manually just forward it.
Oh, no, that's fine. It's the audio.
The audio.
Yeah.
All right. Ooh. I can hear myself. My name's Chris Yalonis. Welcome to Measuring What Matters. I mean, environmental and social performance, what the hell does that mean? How do we measure that stuff? So we're going to talk a little bit about, as small business owners or even as consultants or, again, practitioners, opinion leaders, how do we really measure in a quantifiable, tangible way our performance, right? So we have a triple bottom line, don't we? Who can define our three major pillars of the sustainability platform? Anybody?
People, profitability, and planet.
Okay, right? People, so social equity, justice. Planet is around environmental stewardship and impact. And profit is our typical financial and economic performance metrics that we're so near and dear to. All right. I run a sustainability consultancy down in Marin. We work with businesses and colleges and cities on helping them green their operations as well as their products and services. So we got a team that comes in and does assessments and plans and even puts in governance systems to report out performance for these organizations. So this is how we've kind of learned, how do you make these things tangible and all. So we work with companies like KSL. We're helping them get green seal across all their properties. KSL just bought Squaw Valley. Scavenger is a recycling operation down in South San Francisco. We're helping them get LEED certification. If you're familiar with Greenworks, I did all the market research and product testing for that line before it was launched. Columbia, we developed their sustainability plan, integrated principles into their curriculum. We just finished doing the City of Napa's sustainability roadmap. All right, so why do we care about intelligence around sustainable performance? Well, it's just like business intelligence, right? It's a critical management tool to figure out where your resources are getting placed and if you're being effective or not. And as practice leaders, we're really drowning in a lot of information and data, aren't we? But we're really starved for knowledge. I mean, what's all this data mean, right, in terms of our impact? Are we improving our brand? Are we improving word of mouth? Are we improving the effectiveness of our environmental stewardship and our social wellness programs? So what business intelligence or sustainability intelligence helps us do is empower our teams, right? And our leaders within our organizations to be more in control and have real-time feedback, hopefully, around their operations and around their efforts. So this might be a little bit complex, but what we often see in the evolution of an organization towards embedded sustainability are pilot stages moving towards initiatives and programs, as well as then embedded sustainability, what I might call a systemic stage. And oftentimes at a pilot stage, you're looking at assessing, doing little report cards around how you're doing, setting some goals, establishing priorities, creating some strategies, funding them, making sure they're owned, and then starting to execute on your programs and initiatives and tracking it. Now, what I recommend that you try to do is you move your organization towards, again, an initiative stage or even embedding these programs in your culture, is to develop what I call a sort of a sustainable operating system, right? A sustainable OS. And what that really means is who owns the program, how is it getting funded, how are you going to measure performance, right? It's all about sort of governance. So if you've got a composting or a recycling program, make sure you've got some basic governance behind it, right? Somebody owns it, it's funded, there's a clear ROI about it, there's timelines about it, and you're measuring performance. Okay? That's what that means. So how many of you have heard of SMART goals? Heard that term. So what's SMART mean?
Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-based.
Good. So, right, so as you set up your goals, right, you know, environmental performance or even wellness and social programs, obviously economic performance, make sure that each of those goals have these characteristics, right? So they're specific. We will increase diversion from landfill by 10% over the next 2 years, right? That's specific. Measurable, 10%, timely, within the next 2 years, attainable. You know, you got to be realistic about diversion and you know, reducing, let's say, your waste and making sure that there's a recycling and operationally somebody that can help you with that diversion rate. And then relevant. What's it mean for the organization? Is there a good ROI about it? Is that important to the culture of the organization? So let's look at common economic practices that you want to measure. So oftentimes what we'll see around planning, we have a business plan, right? We have a plan for your owners as they retire. And we often see this in farms, right? Family farms where the parents need to retire and pass that on then to the children. We have marketing and strategic plans. Great tool here, folks, that I'd recommend is something called Business Plan Pro. And there's also a complement called Marketing Plan Pro. And then so that's the best-selling planning software out there. It's by Palo Alto Software. And now they've got an online tool called Live Plan. Really cool. It allows you to, with your team, build your plan with outlines. It's got 500 business templates in there, and about 15 of them are green businesses. And again, everybody can collaborate together to work on the plan. It has really nice outlines. It's got video expertise, really nice sort of business planning and marketing strategy expertise. Got great financial help. So if you want to start creating your budgets, it's got really nice little templates and assumptions that will then crank out all of your pro formas, your revenue models, your balance sheet, your cash flow, and then you basically output that as a PDF. Really good looking PDF that you can take to an investor, you can take them to a loan officer or an angel and raise some money. So what are we concerned about? Well, when we measure economic performance, cash is king. We want to measure how much cash we have in the organization, and if there's investments or lags in revenues and big expense jumps, obviously we want to be measuring our positive cash flow and what we might need around that. We want to show good sustainable profitability around practices. Make sure that your finance, your accounting function, is using good accounting principles, and you're paying attention to that. Now, you're probably here because you're interested in how do we measure environmental and social performance. Well, what we find, I use the big four, and actually there's one other W also, the big 4 W's: waste, or watts, water, waste, and wheels. So what do we measure here in watts? We want to review our PG&E bills, our electric bills, our gas bills. We want to establish a baseline then and work to reduce that, right? And often we measure those kilowatts over some denominator, right? We measure it under, let's say, a square foot, or sometimes it's employee, but it's important that these metrics have a denominator. Do you know what I mean by that? Sort of from a math perspective, because it's not just sort of the absolute number of kilowatts or the absolute amount of trash we're sending to the landfill, but it matters across what space or what entity, right? Is it across a building? Is it across units of production? Is it across people? Water, water's the new carbon, right? So we do want to reduce our our water footprint, and same thing. We want to measure what water usage we have, and oftentimes it's around that same denominator. It might be a square foot. It might be a unit of production, right? So if you're in the beverage industry or in certain water-intensive process industries, water footprint is going to be important to you. And the natural actionable data or actionable outcome there is installing new or retrofitting appliances, low flow appliances and fixtures, and just paying attention to, again, how you're using water. Waste, you want to establish a baseline using an audit, go dumpster diving, it can be a lot of fun, kind of measure what your waste stream looks like, and then you know where that waste is coming from, and you can start to then provide interventions to reduce those particular waste streams. Sometimes it's plastic or paper or compostables, that kind of thing. But you need to do an audit, beforehand to know. Want to look at your supply chain. So take a look at your top 10 suppliers. Identify then what you might be able to do with them to reduce packaging. And packaging is a big source of waste often in a small, medium-sized business. I'm preaching to the choir, but really do look at reusing a lot of these items and recycling as much as you can. Wheels is really about reducing vehicle miles traveled, VMTs, right? So we're looking at car sharing, really providing incentives to your organization or your clients around reducing these vehicle miles. And then, how many of you are using web conferencing on a regular basis? Okay, you all need to be using web conferencing for your meetings, all right? Yes, it's important to have face-to-face, but once you've established trust with the client and affinity, get yourself subscriptions to WebEx, to GoToMeeting, Skype obviously is a big one and a free one. So if you look at a carbon footprint of a typical small business or service business, it's electricity and it's air travel and commuting. Those are typically the biggest part of a carbon footprint of a small business, right? So if you really want to make impact on your CO2, spend some time on how often you have to really fly across the country for a 1-hour meeting, right? Because it can dramatically lower your carbon footprint. How do we measure social practices and indicators? What we often see for small or medium-sized businesses are policies that get put in place around leave for birth or adoption, care of dependent, group health care for employee participation. On the civic side, on the CRS side, to what extent does your organization make contributions to local nonprofits? You can measure those things, right? And again, we're all taking a look at a performance indicator for a particular initiative you want to have or a program, right? So if your senior team says, yeah, we believe we really want to show impact locally from a volunteer perspective, or even showing real cash infusion, matching grants, that sort of thing. This is what we want to be tracking. We don't want to just kind of be giving away cash willy-dilly or just sending people out as volunteers without really tracking what we're doing. Internships are oftentimes really good ways to get your team or your outreach seen. Volunteerism. So, to what extent is your organization giving time off, right? And Google is an example of an organization that allows their employees 5% of their work time to be devoted to volunteer or literally anything that they deem appropriate. The individual does. To what extent does senior management serve on boards locally? So some examples of metrics. So in the energy climate side, you may want to look at, again, watts or therms per square foot. And again, the denominator might be a unit or employee or a square foot. There's some great calculators by the EPA that measure not only your personal footprint, but your small business footprint too. So I'd encourage you to take a look at those sites. Materials, what's the percentage of purchases that you make, right, from sustainable sources? Don't look at 100 of your suppliers, but take a look at your top 10 and say, work with them to say, all right, we're going to start demanding more from our suppliers. We want them to be green too. So can you reduce packaging? Can you tell us about where you're sourcing from as a supplier, right? Tell us a little bit about your ingredients. And it's amazing how much you can drive sustainable behavior on the part of suppliers too that way. Processes, so you know, might be around LEED qualified buildings. So how many of you are, anybody work in LEED buildings? So there's a lot of process involved, right? I mean, in getting LEED certification. But it's a different feel, isn't it, in a LEED building, right? Just working there, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. The productivity, operating expenses typically are much. They just start to come in around LEED certification, and while it might cost just slightly more to build versus a non-LEED building, we're looking at 20 to 40% less operating costs and a 20% bump up in valuation of LEED certification buildings. You know, products and services, we might measure the percentage of sales from your green product lines. Another thing to measure is around customer satisfaction. How many of you heard of the Net Promoter Score as a measure of SAT? So Net Promoter Score is is a customer satisfaction measure, right? And it basically says, on a scale of 1 to 10, to what extent would you recommend this company to your friends or family? To what extent would you recommend this product to your friends or family on a scale of 1 to 10, right? So if you got a bunch of 8, 9s, and 10s, you've got a high Net Promoter Score, right? And guess what those people do?
They recommend.
They recommend, they promote. Word of mouth is fantastic among that group. So it's called a very simple metric of customer sat, Net Promoter Score. It's a simple question to ask after every interaction of a customer with your company or your product. Ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, to what extent would you recommend this product or this company to your friends and family? Boom. Ask that question every single customer, and then move those customers through process and customer sat more towards the 8, 9s, and 10s. And you will see your word of mouth, you will see your customer sat just dramatically improve. All right. I'm going to wrap up here a little bit. How many of you are using some kind of life cycle analysis for any of your processes or products? Anybody yet? Okay. So LCA really means life cycle analysis. It doesn't mean $70,000 in analysis. It means identifying some hot spots in the life cycle of your products or services. What it really means is looking at a water footprint, an energy footprint, a waste footprint in the life of your product. Right? So you might start taking a look at your suppliers. You might look at manufacturing, the transport to customers, the use, and then the disposal. This is what we might call a life cycle of a product. And look at each of those phases to take out environmental impact. Right? Take out water, take out waste, take out any embedded energy or carbon. You don't have to do every single cycle, but look at hot spots. Okay, here's an example of reporting. You get all this great data, make sure people know about it, right? You put it on your website, use maybe 3, 4, 5 metrics. That's going to be plenty. In this case, this British company used some increase in customer sat, employee engagement, supplier relationships. They had a health and safety. They had a little bit of CO2 emission reductions. Again, keep it simple. Certifications. How many of you are using eco labels or certifications in your work? Anybody here? Okay. Can be pretty powerful. You know, Green Seal, Green America, USGBC, FSC are some of the most credible ones. The dashboards that I like in terms of software, there's something called Credit 360, which is a more holistic reporting tool that can not only measure GHG but other metrics. iReuse is a Marin company that is focused primarily on building performance, but it's a pretty good little dashboard also. All right, so takeaways: start small, level you can maintain for your organization. Go through doing a little bit of planning and design. Make sure those metrics are smart. Make sure somebody owns it, and there's some ROI to these programs. And then use 5 to 7 of these key performance indicators and report out on them. That's it. Thanks. So, any questions about sort of how you might want to set these up or measure performance?
Is the name of that program Life Plan? Is
Yep.
that part of Marketing Plan Pro?
It is. It's the online. Well, it's actually Business Plan Pro. It's the online version of Business Plan Pro. Anything else? Yep.
Like frequency of reporting. So we do an annual sustainability report, but within the company, there's a lot of interest in these metrics on more of like a monthly or quarterly level. What's like your recommendation, and do you have any ideas for kind of streamlining the process on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, monthly is I think, a little overkill. I mean, when it comes to monthly or even quarterly, you have to ask yourself, the intervention required to change, right, a performance takes some time, right? So that's why I like, either every 6 months or every year. It takes that long to affect change in some of these.
Well, if you don't know what your baseline is and how you're doing, you won't be able to react. I think what we're asking for is getting more current data so we can react to changes in.
Oh, I see. So like you put in a new boiler or HVAC,
Right.
and
Or
what
water
impacts
usage.
it?
Water usage.
Water usage, right?
You know,
Right. Yeah, I think that does make sense for measuring particular interventions, right? I mean, if you have like a capital expenditure and you want to immediately, and you've got it metered, for example, because sometimes it's tough to keep everything constant, to measure a new piece of equipment, right? Or a new behavior or a new setting of a controller. So.
Yeah.
Anything else? Great. Thank you.